Hello, we are the Youth Participatory Action Research. It's a big name, hold on. Youth Participatory Action Research for High School Equity. We're going to go around the table to introduce ourselves. I'm Melyssa Webb. I'm Sofia Woods. I'm Isabella Woods.
Cotman.
Introduce. Oh, no. Okay. So to start off, we'll be doing an introduction of who we are, how we started, some definitions, then our survey, our data collection, then some result analysis of our survey, that being from our survey, our Spanish survey and our English survey, and then finally just going forward.
I'm going to provide some background information. Again, I'm Timothy Cotman. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator at Wakefield High School. In school year 2020-21, our district had a Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. And during that time, the person in that role directed schools to have school equity teams. They were to include all stakeholders, students, staff, parents, and community members, and we were to meet regularly and talk about concerns, issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we started ours at Wakefield, we were still during the pandemic. So we were all virtual. Staff members met around 11 o'clock once a month. And then towards the end of the year, around March, when the building was reopened, we incorporated students and parents on the team. And since then, we've had all stakeholders. Around that same time, last year, we also started a group. I worked with communities and schools coordinators at Wakefield. We started a group called Identity Matters. And what I realized was the adults in the building, the three of us, had this idea that we wanted to create a space for students of different identities to come together and talk about topics and issues that were relevant to them. We thought we had a great idea. We realized before we got started that we didn't have any student input or student voice. So we went to affinity clubs at school, everything from Black Student Union to Latinos Leading Tomorrow to Asian Club to Equal Club. And then members of, there's a class taught at school that's the Diversity and Leadership course. So we asked those students to participate as well. We presented what we thought was a good idea, and they thought it was a good idea here as well. But they also tweaked it a bit, and students said that they would like to actually facilitate conversations within that group. So we ended up having one that was on microaggressions, and I share that for a couple of reasons. First of all, because there were adults who thought we had a great idea. We didn't have student voice to start with, and once we got that student voice, it just enhanced it so much. And secondly, because when we started the equity teams, in particular, this group who are among the school culture committee, which is a subcommittee of the equity team, and we started working with Youth Participatory Action Research. And the idea that the students and the members of that group would come up with what the topic is going to be, how to research it, the action, and just be involved in every aspect of it. And so today we have members who started out on the school culture subcommittee and have been here the entire time, and also members of the group, which is called Identity Matters, who rolled into the school culture subcommittee as well.
Okay, so as Mr. Cotman said, we are the equity team. We're actually a subcommittee. Our subcommittee is school culture. So we focus on the school environment and whatnot. And before, sorry, let me. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So before we actually develop a plan, we first needed to understand what equity was. A lot of us didn't really know the actual definition. A lot of us assumed that it was like equality, but those two are completely different and they both have different resolutions. And so once we figured out what equity was and, we understood and, did our research on it, we started developing a plan to identify inequities in our school, and we worked hand in hand with other adults and other staff members, like teachers and administrators. So this is the definition of equity. An example would be like when it comes in school and, you know, schools, they send school letters, and administrators will print stuff in different languages so that kids speak, let's take a language like Spanish or Mongolian. Their parents can also understand the same letter an English speaking parent will also be getting. This is the definition of discrimination. So pretty much discrimination is when a student or a group of students, it doesn't really necessarily have to be students, but in this sense, in school, when students or a group of students are mistreated based off their identity, it could be race, gender, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, the language that they speak, you know, what they wear. They can be mistreated because of those certain aspects.
So based on those things that Akua said, those definitions, that idea, that problem that's happening in our community, we created the survey. So the subcommittee created, we amended, distributed this survey called our school culture survey. And we did it both in English and in Spanish. That's one of the biggest languages that we have in school. And so the subjects in this survey was not only for high school students from freshman year, senior year, but as well as staff as well. We wanted to hear back from them as well. And the question that we asked was many questions, but one of them being if they had experienced inequity and based on what factors. So we wanted to understand what specific factors these subjects were experiencing inequity. If it was race, gender, sexual orientation, citizen status, and ability. So, yeah.
So, taking like a closer look at our subjects, we found that the top three racial and ethnic identities of individuals who took this survey were Hispanic and or Latinx at 37.8%, white at 36.2%, and Black and or African American at 22%. And we found that the inequities and or the discrimination that was like either witnessed or experienced the most at the school were offensive comments regarding race. So on the next slide, you can see these are the individuals who experienced inequities or discrimination, and you can see that race is at 48.1% and offensive comments are at 80%. And then the next slide are individuals who observed inequities or discrimination, and for race, it's at 64.1% and offensive comments at 88.9%.
All right, so based off the surveys, what we noticed was that our subjects were 51% sophomores, 27.8% seniors, 23.1% juniors. And so what we noticed from that was one of the questions that we asked in the survey was how do Wakefield staff and students handle an inequitable encounter? So based on the English part of the survey, some of the answers that we found, which were most frequent at the top to least frequent, was when handling an inequitable encounter, these subjects responded that the best way to find a solution for it would be either reaching out to a teacher or administrator. Some mentioned counselors as well. There was a high frequency to ignore it as well, which is a little problematic. It's the problem that we noticed in our survey. And then another one was to interfere and educate. Interfering, none of the results was in a violent way. It was simply to step in, to support their friend, colleague, student, and to educate. We got a few responses that mentioned part of interfering was to speak to the perpetrator and to inform them the harmful comment that they said or whatever it was. But the idea was to educate them. And lastly, less frequent answer was to go to the principal. Right. So in our English survey, the question that was also asked was what do Wakefield High School students and staff believe is a good way to address inequity? And one thing that of the data that we found was that a lot of students and staff wanted to have classes where we discuss and challenge stereotypes, whether that be in an English class or a history class. But based on my experience, I don't think we have those kind of conversations in classrooms because it can be controversial, it can be a little bit heavy, as well as support from admin to staff and students to report inequities they face. Again, a lot of times students have issues with counselors reporting any discrimination or inequity that they face. Should be a top priority, but some students have found that counselors do get busy, things go on, and they would like more support from their admin as well as staff. I would like to specify, I don't know if we specified this in advance, but it was all anonymous. The subjects didn't have any names or anything about them. We kept it all anonymous. And so we weren't able to see which person of which status, of which age was answering our questions. So another response was removing our security officers. Many students felt that some of the answers had explained that the security officers some of them were actually part of the problem. They were saying some harmful comments to the students as well. And as Mr. Cotman introduced our club, one thing that they did talk about was adding diverse clubs that educate people, the students and staff on diversity and minorities, having more of that, making sure that those things are announced to the school, as many students may not be aware of the things that we do have already. And then educating and holding teachers accountable. There were a lot of cases where subjects did specify certain encounters they did have with a teacher. And many felt that it wasn't, even though it was taken to a higher administrator, things weren't dealt that the way that they should be dealt with. So holding these kind of teachers responsible for the actions and the things they say is important for our students to also feel safe in these kind of communities. And as mentioned before, creating more progressive programs to support students with disabilities. That was one of the main things that I had one subject say on the survey, that there wasn't enough, much of the students with disabilities were facing a good amount of inequity, and they felt that there wasn't a compensation or more available help to these students. So yeah, that was one thing that they mentioned. And in our Spanish survey, how some of the responses that we received there, this is how subjects handle inequity. The most frequent and common responses from the Spanish survey we found was to speak to a teacher, then support the victim by defending them, and lastly, our least frequent was actually to ignore it. And in the Spanish survey, we actually had less participants. In the English survey, we had, I think, 198. And in the Spanish survey, we had 18 subjects. So we didn't, there was a little bit of disparity there, but we had 85.7% of freshmen and 14.2% sophomores that were recorded on the Spanish survey.
So continuing from the results from the Spanish survey, obviously 92% of the subjects were Hispanic, but the discrimination that they faced, a lot of it was based on language, expectation, and even sometimes citizen status. And so for language, 50% were the results, offensive commentary and such. And when looking at how often these subjects face this kind of inequities, they had said mostly 70% had actually said a few times a year. And it was interesting to see that most of the subjects ranged from either beginning of high school, 9th grade, to finishing high school, 11th grade. So most of our subjects were in those grades. And then it was interesting to see as well that there was also 93% of our subjects that had never experienced inequities. So although it is interesting to regard that yes, inequities do exist, I found it really interesting that there were results from the Spanish survey that a lot of people did feel that they had never experienced such. Now, going forward, as we had all mentioned in the start, we have a club based on subcommittee from Identity Matters, where we talk about such things and like what we're doing today, presenting about it. We have had microaggression workshops where we explain what microaggressions are. We enlighten people and let them know to look out for it, to be able to address what it is, as well as our club that we're in. We meet Tuesdays and Thursdays. We are all responsible for joining, for speaking. It is mostly us students that are a part of it and make the club itself. And we've been doing research like shown today, gather information, translate it, interpret it, as well as having other sources like Ms. Smith, who is a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator at the middle school, Thomas Jefferson, who has met with us several times to talk about her findings. And so we make connections in the middle school and in the high school based on inequity.
So going forward, some future ideas that we'd like to see based from what we discussed was to create workshops that inform Waco students on harmful comments. Something like that was created in a middle school, and we looked at the results in the workshop, and it looked pretty, it was very interesting to see. It looked pretty cool. We liked the way that Ms. Smith
worked with it. And something like that to incorporate in our high school would be wonderful. Again, as mentioned before, sometimes we don't see this kind of conversations in schools, and that would be an important thing to incorporate, because that way students are held accountable, but they also are educated on these important things that can be harmful. And then running a public service announcement to inform staff, faculty, and students. At Wakefield, we have all kinds of things. We have WAM, Wakefield Action Media, which is every Wednesdays. We have students report things, share things, that kind of stuff. And then we have our announcements. So seeing maybe a couple days announcements to share about our meetings, to grow our club a little bit bigger as well, and to hopefully gather more attention as well. That would be great to see that. And then placing informational posters around the school. We have a couple for drugs and harmful things, that kind of stuff. And I would like to see some about for our either microaggressions or inequities, seeing what words are used and how that can be harmful. That way students are constantly walking around the halls of our high school, and to catch a glimpse, maybe every day on your walk to math class, you can see a little bit, and hopefully our message is more spread that way. And then heightening our Instagram account, as mentioned in the other slide before, we had our Instagram account when we joined Identity Matters, and we all do other things. I'm in other clubs, and I've noticed that social media is very important with the youngsters. So that's a way that we can engage most of our people. So a lot of clubs, it's very normal for a lot of clubs to have social media accounts. That way we can follow other individuals and keep things posted. That's one way where we can announce much of our information, workshops, that kind of thing. I would love to see our Instagram account grow. That way we can get more people to follow and hopefully more people joining our events like this. And those are just some citations, definition of equity, and some photo credits. And that's it. We're doing, not even half an hour. Yeah.
So we definitely would love to open it up for any questions or discussion that people comment.
Not all at once.
And if you're on the virtual, you can put questions in the chat if you'd like.
My name is Melyssa, and I'm a faculty member here. And first of all, I want to thank you for presenting at our Peace Week. I have been very much in the background of seeing what has been developing with this project. And so to see, there was a time where we were discussing even the crafting of the survey questions. So to see the data results from it is exciting. I'm very nerdy about that kind of thing. That's cool. I'm interested to know more about your group. So like, how many people participate? Are there like a number of regulars that are kind of, make sure that they're more regular at the meeting? Like, what does that look like right now? Because you've started this in one of the most challenging times to be students, right? This pandemic. I'm still wearing a mask in different contexts, and like, tell us about what that was like, please, during the pandemic. Please tell us what it looks like to be a participant and a member of your group. Because this is very, for somebody like myself, I don't have the experience of what it means to join a group in a context of like separation. This is a very challenging time. So I would love to hear your story there.
Let me just start off, and then if you then I'm gonna ask you to share your experience as students. So when we started with the this particular subcommittee, school culture subcommittee, there were, I want to say, 7 students came regularly. Some of those are seniors, so they graduated last year, and I want to say maybe half of them. The students, when they first came in and they were talking about school culture, they had a list, and one of the things on the top of the list was offensive comments. And they felt like it was, they were just often hearing things at school. So that particular group was almost all female, and there were more Black girls on it. So when we were having conversations, we thought, what we talked about was the other students at school may experience the same things you do, but because that was a demographic that wasn't representative of the diversity of the school, we went to having a survey. That's what led us to get the survey, so we could get more input from a diverse range and more representative of the student body. And then we thought, oh, we should also talk to staff as well. So the reason why now it's a little more fluid, Melyssa and Akua have been, say I'm mispronouncing your name, or Akua, I'm sorry. Melyssa and Akua have been on from the beginning. And then Sofia and Izzy were a part of Identity Matters. And then they came on more recently.
Okay.
So the Identity Matters group that we had last year, we ended up doing, one workshop on microaggressions. And then because we were doing more work towards this, the survey and this project, that fell to the side somewhat. So we haven't been doing as much with Identity Matters this year, but we've been doing more with presentation. Now you all can add.
So I actually joined my 11th grade year, and Melyssa actually went to 9th grade year in the first one. So,
Well, okay, in terms of my like experience, I love being part of the agency. As a student, like I've witnessed like a lot of different abuse and discrimination in the building, and I just knew it wasn't right. So I think it's like nice to like have like a group of people who also like have the same views. So like there needs to be like a change in the community or in the school community. So I think it's great that like the amount of work that we've done so far, and I'm excited to like keep moving forward. The 9th grade year, I think we started off with like trainings, like learning what equity was, and like basically what Akua was saying in the beginning, like differentiating it from like equality. So that's what we were doing in the beginning, and then when we came back into the building for in-person learning, we actually met like all together as an equity team, and then we kind of like divided into like the subcommittees, and then that's how I was like put into like the school culture committee, because I like signed up for it. So
so pretty much what Melyssa said, I wanted to join because I also myself saw a lot of things that I didn't think were right, and I also experienced things that I didn't think was right, and my friends as well. So I wanted to be part of something that can change, and we can come up with something to help our school body.
Unfortunately, well, for me, on the contrary, being the race that I am, I've never really seen or experienced any inequities. And so coming into the club, I was curious because I mean, my perspective of Wakefield might be different from Queens and Melissa's. I see Wakefield as a perfect school with no inequities, everyone's fair. Well, that's what I saw in 9th grade. And then coming up with Identity Matters and being in that group, I think if I were not in that group, I wouldn't have been aware. And so definitely helped me target and pinpoint the kind of stuff that does exist in Wakefield and what they're called. And just being more involved. And yeah, I think it really helped just kind of brighten my horizons and open up a little bit. I know I have to agree. The things that we and Melyssa have experienced, being Spanish American, we obviously, this color of our skin, it's unfortunate to see that makes such a difference. And so I was working with another club. I was working with another club, with Asian Club, and I was invited by Cotman, and I joined Identity Matters. And one of the things that really stuck with me was our microaggression unit. When we did a workshop, we had a section where we had students. We had like Acumen and the Black Student Union come in as well. We did a workshop where we had asked them to share specific examples or to share their experience. And that really touched me because, as mentioned by Sofia, I had this blindfold over my eyes when walking into the school building. So it really touched me to see what other people are experiencing. And I thought that this would be something great that I could be a part of to hopefully help my classmates as well. And it's a how do I word this? It's such a big learning experience. Being a student, I can actually do something for my school, not just do homework and take exams. So being able to learn a little bit more about my school and being able to help and work with such a wonderful group has been an exciting part of this.
yeah, can I add on this? Also, one of my favorite things about equity team is that like there's no like leadership role, so we all like work together, so we're all able to like pour out our ideas and stuff, and it's not like, oh, we don't want to do this, we want to do that, and we like vote on anything. It's kind of like we all are able to share, collaborate.
Right. And sorry, one more thing. Last year, about the experience that you're mentioning, lockdown, I know Melyssa joined virtually when it really hit. But last year, it was still, I can't even remember, but it was still a year that everybody was wearing masks.
Yeah.
So that was, if you see our Instagram picture, that was still a time when we were all wearing masks, but we were still engaging physically in classrooms. I think we were just meeting once a week. Yeah, once a week, warriors period. So yeah, that's one thing about last year as well. Yeah.
And I just wanted, I really quickly just wanted to add, and give a big thanks to Professor Lucas and Yasi too, because when we were developing the survey, we did do some research into how to develop a good survey, watched a video and had some other resources. But then we're able to reach out because Professor Lucas and Yasi is an expert on surveys, and so she was able to provide us with some feedback that was really helpful.
We had a question over here.
I was gonna ask about the survey, but like, how you guys came up with the question, like trying to include every little aspect into it. And also like, how you guys got out the survey as well, like, how you, like, reach it out to everyone else, make sure it got to everyone.
Who wants to say it?
So, first, we sat down, we had a conversation about things we saw, and then we narrowed it down to a couple inequities. So we focused a lot on effective comments and things come out. And then at first we started on notes. So we had notes on Doc, and it was just like write things down. And then we had some expert on survey, and we took our own survey and talked to one of the school staff members who also is an expert on surveys and how we should format, lay it out. And then we moved all our notes to a Google survey. And then afterwards, we actually had a little issue when putting surveys out because we had to figure out a day and a time and when it was best for everybody to do it. And eventually we wanted the whole school to take it, but it wasn't possible. So I'm glad we got to do that.
Just to build on what Thea was saying, we wanted to do the survey at the end of last year, and because it was the end of the year, we felt like it wouldn't, a lot of people would do it, because you kind of, folks start to check out as the year is getting towards the end. And then just realizing, just like for the example, the demographic information that we took from the survey, trying to make sure we're using the right terms, that things that we're putting in the survey are not offensive to people that were asking to take the survey about, discrimination and inequities. So that took a while just to make sure. And we had different groups at school to look at different sponsors of certain clubs. I know like the Equal Club sponsor, we went and had Ms. Campbell look at it just to make sure that the language we're using was correct. And then there have been a lot of surveys towards the end of the school, I think the first half of school, so we were worried about survey fatigue. And to have 200, so we went back and did it, put it out a couple of times, sent it out to staff, all staff, and sent it out to sponsors of clubs. And we put up flyers around town hall, which is kind of the main hub of Wakefield in English and in Spanish, so students could just use QR code and take it. And then the groups that I will sponsor, I also asked those students to take it. So I think the original one, we had maybe 70 responses, and then we got up to almost 200 with the English survey.
Yeah, the Spanish one wasn't much of a success, but we tried. We did try to get as much as possible, and I think we announced it on Canvas as well. So yeah, we had it on Canvas, which many students are on there.
Morning announcement.
Yeah, as much as we could. Yeah.
So, this is fascinating. Thank you for including me here. My name is Pat Niscolo. So I was wondering, since you've been involved in this for the last year, has your group become better known in the whole school? And on that, I wondered, have you had incidents of people coming to you when they're in a conflict and need help resolving it? So that's true. And then the third question is whether you have any aspirations or dreams, what you wish would be in the school, a place or a mechanism for students who who are asking for an intervention that's more than, you know, I imagine it runs the gamut of some teachers who are very skilled in helping you and others not so.
So, no, for your first question, and I don't think, especially I don't think the students are aware about, the survey and the results that we have found. And so I don't even think anyone knows what Equity Club is. So, which is on our part, I think, I think we should put the club out more so that people are more aware. Again, this goes with the making announcements, and having maybe a broader Instagram account, just so that people are more aware. So that hasn't happened, but that would be great if that could happen. I think that definitely, if people were aware, they definitely would come to the meetings and want to be part of it, and if we want to make a change. For aspirations, I would like to see Wakefield a place where we don't just say, you know, like, oh, boys will be boys, or we don't allow for harmful comments to just be the normal. I think it's important to understand, it's hard to say no, this is not okay to some things, because there is a fine line. How do you know when you're joking around with your friends and when you're taking it too far? So it's hard to define that, but I'd like Wakefield to be more of a place where people are aware of what they're saying instead of just saying it ignorantly. And so I think coming to our club and being a part of it, I think that's where you can learn. Yeah, I'd like to see Wakefield in that kind of environment. To add on to that, we have had a couple people drifting into our equity club. We did have a couple, we had like another member, she wasn't able to make the presentation, but even though they can't make the presentation, they're still with us. They still support us, they're still helping us. So we probably reached maximum around maybe 10 people. Some, again, come in and out, everyone's busy, I understand. So that's probably as big as we've gotten. In regards to that situation, I have been in a good amount of clubs. I've been in 5 clubs, and something I've noticed is that a lot of people will join clubs for, especially towards the end of the year, for college credit. So yeah, and that very much bothers me. So, and the problem with that is, I have a couple of students that, or not my students, but I have a couple of classmates that come in for the 5 minutes, leave for other clubs, just to get that recognition that they were there, but they don't put the work into it. So I've noticed that, that as well as what we've mentioned before, there are some people that don't see it. So if you don't see it, you don't see a problem. And I guess that's another reason why people don't feel that they should join this club, or maybe they just don't know about it because they didn't know of the original problem with our Wakefield community in the beginning. So that, and then, and to add to your third question, some aspirations that I would like is workshops, if not that in classrooms, having a class talking about these things. We got some of our information from a workshop that was done in Thomas Jefferson, and I thought it was so great. So I would love to see a classroom where students, it's uncomfortable to talk about these things, especially the words itself, where you hear them. It's incredibly uncomfortable, I understand, but I would love for that, how do I explain?
An environment.
I would love, yeah, just have a classroom where you can talk about it, and then we discuss about it as well. And I think Wakefield should be a place where that's great if you want to say those things outside of school, but I just don't think school is the right appropriate to be doing that. And a lot of students don't know how to differentiate their outside community with this Wakefield community.
In terms of your first question, one of my friends asked me like what like the equity team was, so I told her like, you know, what work we were doing in terms of like the survey. And then I think there was an announcement on campus about like new members who are interested in joining. So she is actually like in the process of like joining the club. So I'm happy that we're gonna have new members that are like interested in like the topic of like, you know, changing like the school.
And just so you know, this was the school culture was one subcommittee of the equity team, and we had students, this is the only committee that meets at school. And the other committees meet during night virtually, because we were trying to catch staff, students, and parents. And from last year, this committee continued to meet, but again, it's easier because we can just meet at school. So the time that we meet what is called during Warriors period, it's about maybe 30 minutes. By the time you get in and you get going, it's not a lot of time. So we started meeting twice a week in preparation for this presentation, and also to make sure that we can put action behind the data. To your question about students coming up and expressing things that have been said or inequities or discrimination, we purposely did not include something like that in the survey because we had multiple conversations about not wanting participants who complete the survey to feel like we have the capacity to address everything that may have happened. So we wanted to make it more general, and because my view was that I don't want folks to take the survey and then think, oh, this group is going to, have the power, authority, capacity to do something about that. But finding with the data that there, folks that don't know what to do if you encounter discrimination or inequities, then, we could put together a workshop around that, or we could train staff members on what to do when you hear certain things, or, and even the question about comments, which we thought was going to be prevalent, which turned out it was. We also made sure that we put in there that it could be because of ignorance, and it's not necessarily because someone is trying to be hurtful. Just to kind of cover the range.
Yeah. I have, are there other questions? Here's a question I want to get back in the queue. From a social science standpoint of like collecting like data and thinking about projects, this is one in which it is a collective effort. And I understand, like, I do remember what it was like to be in high school. And I was never of adult age when I was in high school. I turned 18 when I was in college. And so what has it been like for you as high school students to have to have the role, to have the voice, to have the collaboration with staff, with parents, people, right, who in more traditional settings, right, they're the ones in charge, right? But I know that there's been an effort to really platform your voices and think about this as a real collective. Do you feel that? Is it different than anything else that you participate in at school? What has that been like?
I like really cool because personally in the past, your years, usually it was just teachers and administrators doing all the talking, and to be able to voice my opinion and to be able to hear opinions from other students and to really understand what we're going through.
It definitely made me feel like I wasn't just a high school student, but I also made feel like a high school student. I felt a lot more connected to my school and that my voice actually did matter. And I think this club allowed for our voices all to be heard. So I definitely I didn't feel like in middle school I didn't feel that kind of support, and it did feel that it was, if I had a problem, I went to the administrators. They didn't handle it, which is what happened a lot. And so the fact that there's support of people, there's a group of people that represent an equity, or that represent a group of people, and that are like that they're a megaphone to voices. I think that, I don't know, it feels very powerful. Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think I definitely agree. So seeing the kind of, again, the answers were anonymous, and seeing the level of importance of this, how the kind of things that my community was experiencing, that was very big. And to be a part of that, because normally that ugly stuff is dealt by the adults, I guess, as Akua mentioned. So being a part of that and being a sort of source, like Miss Emily would ask us always. It wasn't only her when dealing with things. She wanted to hear our ideas and thoughts, as well as Mr. Comment. So it felt that I was a part of a group and part of something bigger. I was involved in a big problem in our community and in our world, and being able to play a piece in that role was, I felt like an adult. I felt pretty good.
Yeah, can I add something? So when we first started meeting, since, like my sophomore year, Mr. Cotman and Miss Emily would ask, like, we would be having a discussion, they would ask like, well, what do you guys think about this? And mostly the room would just be like silent, so everyone was like nervous. But I think now we've kind of built like this space where like we're more comfortable to like share our ideas without it being like, oh, I don't know if I want to say this, I don't know if like they're gonna like handle the situation or if they're gonna agree with my like idea. Like it feels more like if I say something, they may not necessarily agree with it, but they'll take into account like my views and yeah.
I don't know if you're that.
I could go on.
Okay.
So I'm a political scientist. And I think about, particularly race in the United States. It is very clear to me that the culture war has been brought to public education. The fact of your existence as a group, it would not be surprising to me if there's a certain examination that like the equity group, right? Like the word equity is being examined in a particular way and is being framed as something. I don't know if this is something that everyone's gonna be on board, whereas quite frankly, in 2020, there was this huge flood of support around these ideas. And there is there's a countering to that right now. And I don't know if it's something that you see. I see it in certain ways. I wonder if, do you ever talk about, for example, and this is like a very much a student focused question here. Do you see questions about curriculum? What is being taught?
Yes.
Because right now, the state of Virginia is looking at its standards of learning. It does it every 6 or 7 years. And there is a new proposal for the things that should be, discussed. And equity is at the center of some of this. There are other matters that are, and I'm wondering, is this something that could you hear from the students? Is there any concern about this, or is it kind of like, I just need to get to class?
So I take sociology, and that's one of the things that we were discussing about, and we actually looked at Wakefield's. Well, we had a bunch of staff come in, we had assistant principals, head of APS, whatever we did, I don't remember. But we had a bunch of people from different positions coming in, from assistant principal to APS to even higher. And we spoke to them about their curriculum. And one of the things that I don't know about these girls, but my group of friends, we have discussed, I know in Florida, they're doing this they're looking at the curriculum there and getting rid of African studies. And I know in Virginia, they're doing pretty much the same thing here too. And that's raised a lot of alarms in my friend group as well. But I genuinely think if I didn't have that pedestal in sociology, because my teacher, we explore all of that kind of stuff. So I think if I didn't have that sort of door wide open where I can see the things that normally are behind the scene, I would have missed it. I think she missed it. Well, it's funny you say that because we have an African American studies in our school, and I have classmates that have taken that class, and especially last math class, we were just talking about it, and my classmate was saying how he finds it really, really, really intriguing. And he had mentioned that the homework work is easy or it's light, but he had said with the material that we learned, it was probably one of my favorite. He literally said it's probably one of my favorite classes I've taken in all 4 years. So the fact I feel very lucky that we have classes like that. Whereas, like, I did hear about the ban, in Florida, the African American studies. I know that they want to get rid of that. There's one in Virginia. What was the? I don't know if there's one in Virginia. There's a lot of things going on. Yeah, but there's. You guys, that's I'm shocked. I'm shocked to hear it because I feel like Virginia is such. Well, especially where we live. I feel like, there's African American studies. There's Latin American studies. You have such a variety. So I'm very surprised to hear it. But I think the students at Wakefield, since we're so diverse, I think they're able to actually appreciate this kind of studies.
Yeah, I actually took African American studies last year, and there's like a lot that I didn't even know about my own history, but it's important that we have classes like that.
Well, student voice matters a lot. And I've heard students coming to public hearings to express the desires that they want for their public school education. And, your voice, you're really in a time where you are developing the strength of your voice, your arguments, your capacity to listen to other people. And, I just, somebody who just thinks a lot about democracy and who thinks about like where we're headed. I'm really encouraged by seeing you all here today and the things that you're interested in and the skills you're developing. And we're gonna, whatever your position is on these matters, like we need people's voices in the mix. So this is to me, this presentation is bigger than what you're actually presenting. And I applaud you. I applaud the effort that you've all put into this and the commitment you have. Thank you.
Any questions? Well, did you all have any other final comments you would like to make or any questions you have?
I apologize if the owl picked up my stomach grumbling. No, I hope we can do this again. I hope next time in the future our club is bigger. That'd be much. That'd be really great, but yeah.
Do you know why more women come than men? I sort of.
I didn't want to mention it. I didn't want to mention it. I think it's a lot to do with maturity. I think it has a lot to do with maturity. We did have these two guys that came, but they came because they were forced to. And so, because it's like an equity club, like, it's an equity club, but everyone here is women. Like, I can see why there might be a little misunderstanding about that, but I don't know. I feel like just women care more. I was gonna mention that, but I thought it might be a little controversial. I agree. I definitely think, especially, I'm sure there's a fine group of men out there that are, I'm sure I've yet to meet them. But yeah, we were, sorry, no offense to the gentleman. I think we were approached, like I was called in because I was a head of a club. And I wanted to do it, and these girls want to do it too. So you can't push someone to do something that they don't want to do. And yeah,
I think in like the high school setting, there's just a level of maturity that girls just have.
yeah, about it.
You know, there's more than. Boys should be held back one whole year. And to start.
Not very equitable.
I remember being in high school and having that said all the time, that the
Right.
girls were always one with your in the town, like hearing that. And then, there's probably some truth to that, but I remember, I of our leadership when I was in school, high school many years ago, there were young ladies who were the class president and guys, we were kind of sitting in the back or whatever.
I'm just saying, political science, you say civic engagement. You have women showing up. Civil rights movement, figureheads, male. People getting work done, women. I'm just saying. So it's not like a.
I would like to add that, just how proud I am of all of you all. Melyssa, Akua have been from the beginning and just coming down and just consistent, particularly since those of you are seniors. 3 of you are seniors, and everything that goes on your senior year and all the responsibilities you have, applying to college and just everything. But for you all to stay committed to this and to put the work in, Melyssa, I know that you are not a senior yet, but I so appreciate your commitment and particularly the 2 of you for just being constant. It's been great. And then for 2 of you to come in and just pick up the, and just kind of inject some energy and looking at what we're doing with fresh eyes. Just really proud of all of you.
Let's look at that.
Yeah.
Definitely, I know I can, that we can all count on one another to be there, and to support the work and to make sure it moves forward. It's been really great working with this group. And I know continue to. I couldn't tell, were there some other comments? Like Melyssa, did you?
Oh, I would like to say, thank you guys for joining our club as well. You guys really helped expand, a lot of our things, the creativity and focus on a lot of this stuff.
But thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.